Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm In Paris here with ILTV's Morning Briefing.
An ongoing operation in the southern Gaza Strip overnight Sunday ended in tragedy as an IDF officer was killed and another wounded. The slain soldier has only been identified as Lieutenant Colonel M for now. However, according to the Army, quote, his heroic actions will not be published in the media, but he deserves our salute. His actions led to Israel having superiority over its enemies, end quote. He was also a father of two. The incident occurred in the Gaza town of Khan Yunis, and Israeli defense officials have stated clearly that despite reports, the operation was not intended to kidnap or assassinate. Rather, the Army claims that the operation was to gather intelligence, but it went haywire halfway through when they were identified and intercepted. That's when a firefight broke out in which Lieutenant Colonel M and at least 7 Palestinians were killed. Allegedly, among the Palestinians killed in the shootout were top Hamas commanders and terrorists as well, however. Senior Hamas officials from the Izz-e-Din al-Qassam brigade said that a special Israeli force infiltrated Khan Yunis in a civilian car, and that once there, quote, the force assassinated the commander of our forces. The withdrawal of the enemy led to the martyrdom of a number of people, end quote. Hamas went on to charge that the alleged target of the incident, however, was Khan Yunis commander Sheikh Noor Barakeh, who supposedly led Hamas's southern terror tunnel program. As for the IDF, the civilian car wasn't the only force that entered the strip. The military later confirmed that 3 of the 7 Palestinians who were killed in the shootout, and then IAF jets fired at least 20 projectiles at Khan Yunis, killing another 3. The 7th was wounded earlier and died of his injuries. In response, Gaza fired at least 17 missiles at Israel. There were no reports of injuries or damages, and 3 of the projectiles were intercepted by the Iron Dome. As of now, it has been a century since the end of World War I, and Prime Minister Netanyahu gathered in Paris along with over 70 other world leaders to mark the centennial. His visit was cut short, however, due to the intense clashes that broke out between Israeli forces and Palestinian fighters in the Gaza Strip last night. But before departing, Netanyahu commented that hundreds of thousands of Jewish fighters were involved in World War I, and that the war marked a turning point for Jews to defend themselves, paving the way for Zionism to flourish. Netanyahu also attended a ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe, as well as a luncheon with international leaders. And although France discouraged side talks during the event, Netanyahu managed to have a, quote, good and business-like conversation with Russian President Putin. This was the first meeting between the two since the downing of a Russian spy plane in Syria during a September Israeli air raid. Reports up until the meeting were that Putin had canceled it in an apparent snub over Netanyahu, but thankfully that talk has just been put to rest. Netanyahu was also seen with United States President Donald Trump and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and he added that many African leaders also came up to him about the importance of the cooperation with Israel and ways Israel could help their countries. Meanwhile, France is now holding a 3-day international peace forum that will end on Tuesday and aims to highlight the importance of the global community at a time when people are questioning the necessity of international institutions. But while the international peace forum was going on, southern Israel was far from peaceful. After the clashes broke out between Israeli commandos and Hamas fighters in Gaza Sunday night, Netanyahu cut his trip short and headed back to Israel. Until Prime Minister Netanyahu was scheduled to arrive, Defense Minister Lieberman was left in charge of convening the security cabinet of top ministers. There are no statements from the meeting just yet. While leaders are gathered now in Paris to commemorate the end of World War I, last week Friday, German Chancellor Angela Merkel commemorated the anniversary of the 1938 Kristallnacht pogroms in World War II. Speaking to Jewish leaders at a Berlin synagogue, Merkel said that, quote, Jewish life is blossoming again in Germany, an unexpected gift to us after the Shoah, but we are also witnessing a worrying anti-Semitism that threatens Jewish life in our country, end quote. Merkel went on to call for a zero-tolerance policy towards anti-Semitic and violent hate groups, but while her rhetoric is well and good, critics have pointed to the severe lack in enforcement of such ideals. Not only have anti-Semitic incidents been surging across Europe unhindered, a new book by British Holocaust historian Mary Fulbrook details how little Germany actually did to hold Nazis and neo-Nazis responsible for their crimes. In Reckonings, Legacies of Nazi Persecution and the Quest for Justice, Fulbrook writes that while 1 million people were believed to have been active participants in the Holocaust genocide, only roughly 20,000, or 2%, have ever been found guilty, and only 600 of them were ever given sentences over 2 to 3 years. Further, only 164 individuals were ever sentenced for charges of murder. Fulbrook illustrates that, quote, the total number of persons convicted under the Federal Republic for Nazi crimes was in itself fewer even than the number of people who had been employed at Auschwitz alone, end quote. She said that and how only 567 of the convicted Nazi criminals were ever sentenced to death or life in prison. Fulbrook concludes also that the only following orders argument had been accepted so often that, quote, in effect, if not in intention, West German law condoned obedience to a deadly regime and condemned only those who had individually stepped beyond Nazism's already murderous limits. Following a series of fatal car crashes on the same Jerusalem highway, Transportation Minister Israel Katz has finally ordered plans to be drawn up to expand the controversial Route 90. In the last 3 weeks alone, 17 people have been killed on Route 90. 2 weeks ago, 8 members of a single family were killed in a head-on collision on the road near the Dead Sea. Then on Sunday, 6 Palestinians from East Jerusalem died in a similar crash in the Jordan Valley. And then on Friday, the road was closed due to heavy flooding, where police issued a statement that part of Route 90 may be at risk of collapse due to flash flooding. They told drivers to exercise extreme caution when driving in the area. Last week, Katz said that budget constraints, traffic considerations, and safety issues prevented any major renovation work on the road. But he changed his position on the matter this week, saying that the project, quote, stems from a strategic national vision, end quote. Route 90 is the longest route in Israel, and it goes from the north in Metula all the way down south to Eilat. Most of the road is decades old and as of now is only 1 lane wide in each direction with no divider. So as part of the plan, Transportation Minister Katz said in a statement that the road will be expanded to 2 lanes in each direction, with an option to add a third on some sections of the 480-kilometer route. No divider will likely be placed just yet, however, and no details were given on the cost or time frame for this project either.
That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.